Hello, friend. John Dalton here with the Further Emergence Podcast, where we explore consciousness and the mystery and love. And in this episode, we've got a question about love and relationships and consciousness. So I'll get to that later. But before that, let's have a quick review of the memes from the Further Emergence Instagram feed. First one, I don't even know where I came across this one. It's like a picture of a little bit of a cutout of a newspaper article. And it says, the legendary cellist Paolo Casals was asked why he continued to practice at age 90. And he says, because I think I'm making progress. And that's always very popular with artists, that one, because it's this idea of continual improvement. But it doesn't just apply to artists, it applies to everything. Because one of the things about getting older, and you'll probably notice this in yourself and in your observation of older people, is it's very easy to sort of feel like you automatically get wisdom just because you've been around for a while. And you automatically know how the world is and you know the way things work. And it's totally not true in my experience. Because how many older people have you met who are like babies? You know, they're just like big children. They're immature. They're emotionally demanding. They're not wise. They're not wise at all, but they're sort of strutting around going, oh, I've been around and I didn't get where I am today without, And it's kind of the same. Like what's beautiful about this quote is that he's 90 years old. He's obviously a fantastic cellist and he's still practicing because not for any external thing, but for this internal drive that he's got of like, I think I could be a little bit better. I think I could be a little bit better. So that activates his whole life. Like in my sense of it is that the idea of retirement is not great. And it's not really sensitive to what's actually happening in terms of the growth of a person, the evolution of a person. Evolution is not the right word, but let's just say the growth of a person. Growth's not the right word either, okay? But stop, I won't be able to say anything if I keep saying all the wrong words. So as a person, as you kind of go through your life, the idea of having a big rest at the end, it's very bad for your health, in my experience, because, and it comes from this like conditioning of, you get a job, you work, and then, all going well when you're 65 or what, it'll be 70 soon. You can have a rest. You can get a little bit of a rest. And that's a very seeing people as workers kind of way of looking at things, because it's kind of like, well, you're kind of useless from now on, really. You're not really, you're not productive. You're not producing for the machine, for the man. Well, but from a person point of view, that the last thing you want to do is slow down as you get older. If anything, I think your projects need to get bigger and bigger and bigger, because as you get older, you are not so concerned about what other people think. You still are. I still am anyway. But nothing like I used to be when I was like in my 20s. Very different. And I think it's the same with other people as they get older. So you can take on bigger projects. And it's not like, oh, well, I'm only going to take on a project that I think I can finish. Like, that's not the point. The whole point is like the energizing energy that comes into you when you're engaged in a project, a new project. So, and particularly in your inner life, it just amplifies as you get older. So, because you're getting closer to death, there's a good chance you're getting closer to death. We're all an instant away from death, and we just don't know when. But if you just kind of go on the all things being equal, not being in a car accident or something out of the blue, as you get older, you're getting closer to death. So, like, if you're going to look at it from a Tibetan Buddhist point of view, their whole thing is about preparing for death. So that process will speed up as you get older. So being conscious of that and being a participant in that is really important. So this idea of like, oh, I'm going to retire and then I'm just going to do nothing. That's why so many people die, within 5 years of retiring, because it's kind of counter to what the inner process is. So that quote really sums it up beautifully. I love it. And so do a lot of other people. It's a very popular one, that one. Next one is a lovely quote from Rumi. It's kind of a continuation from what we were talking about last week. And it says, let yourself be silently drawn by the strange pull of what you love. It will not lead you astray. I love that. Because it kind of speaks to, what I love, which is the mystery, God, this thing that I can't put into words, yet I know I love, and I know it loves me. Not in a personal way, not like being patted on the head or anything like that, or, I know every hair on your head, that old quote? Not in that kind of personal way. It's just a very deep knowing that I'm part of something. I'm like a little droplet that knows I'm part of the ocean, and I love the ocean and the ocean loves me. It's that kind of thing. So this quote saying, let yourself be silently drawn by the strange pull of what you love. Now, I'm just talking about me here, okay? It could be something else for you, but I think it's the idea of if you stay true to that it won't lead you astray. I think there's great wisdom in that. And Rumi is great. He's a great poet. He has, he's so quotable. He's so memeable. All his poems, you can just take these little bits. And he's been gone for a long time, so it's beautiful. The next one, I did write this, and I suppose it's a little poem. And it says, make a friend of silence, stalk it if you can. Let it melt the pity chatter, let it soak up your despair. Make a friend of silence, keep it throbbing in your heart. Let it breathe the private wounds and sanctify your air. And that's one of those things, like when I wrote that, when I finished it, I was like, wow, that's pretty amazing. Did I write that? Who wrote that? Did I write it? It's pretty good. But it sort of really sums up what I really love about meditation. And, you've heard me talk about meditation before and how my mind doesn't like it. And it's always complaining about it and always coming up with reasons why it'll be much better to meditate later or yesterday, not now, anytime but now. But some part of me also knows that going into the silence, going into the mystery, has helped me so much, has just helped with really personal things like my pity chatter, getting a bit of a distance from that, my despair, getting some distance from that, and seeing it for what it is. And this idea that it sanctifies my air, I wouldn't have really described it like that until I wrote that, but it does. In some way, it brings the mystery closer to me, more conscious to me. Because particularly when you start in meditation, you can feel like you're going somewhere. And people will often use the language of travel, like, oh, I went very deep. I was in a very deep meditation. And sometimes, particularly if you sit up when you're meditating, and I would encourage you to sit up when you're meditating, because it's very different when you lie down. Number one, it's really hard not to fall asleep. But when you sit up when you're meditating, you can sort of feel like you're going somewhere. You're descending on the inside, like you're traveling down inside your body, or inside. I don't know if it feels like it's in your body, but you're traveling down. And in that kind of model, meditation can feel like you're at one level, you're going along, then you meditate, you drop down. It's like you're going down a mine shaft to the mine, and the mysteries at the bottom of the mine. And then when you're coming back from meditation, you get in the lift again, you come back up, and then you continue on with your life. And as I say, that's inaccurate, but just can feel like that. What it feels like, the more I meditate, it's almost like the mine shaft starts to come up, gets shorter. The mystery starts to get closer and closer and comes up, and it sort of comes out of the mine shaft and filters into my whole kind of life. And that's what that feeling of it sanctifying my air. Because the more I meditate, the more I'm familiar with that. And the more I realize, wow, the mystery is just here all the time. It's just a matter of focus. What I'm doing when I'm meditating is I'm just blocking off my sense of sight, and I'm just switching my focus to the mystery. But it's not like I'm going anywhere. It's been there the whole time, It's like this analogy I use of the forest, like you can stand in front of a forest and you can, if you throw your eyes out of focus, you can see all the trees. And if you want to focus on the trees that are nearest you, you can, but you can't see the trees. Not that you can't see them, but they're out of focus, the ones at the back of the forest. And then if you kind of I want to look at the trees at the back of the forest, you shift your focus to the trees at the back of the forest and you can see those, but the ones that are closest to you, they're out of focus now. And same if you wanted to focus on the ones in the middle of the forest, they'd be focused. The ones in the distance would be out, and the ones that are closest to you, they'd be out of focus too. All the trees are there all at the same time. It's just a matter of where you're focusing. And similarly, we sort of go around in our lives and we're just in the frontal part of our awareness, the front trees. And when we meditate, we sort of feel like we're traveling into the forest, but we're not really. We're just refocusing to the trees at the back of the forest, which would be the mystery. But the forest is there. All the trees exist all at the same time. So you're not actually going anywhere. It's just a matter of being focused. And my life most of the time feels like I'm standing in front of the forest and they're all slightly out of focus and they're all slightly in focus. I'm kind of conscious of them all at the same time, which is beautiful. And it does sanctify my air. Farm news. Not a huge amount of farm news, except sheep. Lots of sheep. I went for my walk the other day. Oh, I knew there were more sheep around, okay? That's number one. Because a couple of other farmers have come in and they're taking care of the sheep here. And they've also brought some of their own sheep here as well. So the number of sheep on the property has increased a lot. I'm on this 55 acres, but I'm just renting this little house in the middle of it, watching all this farm activity going on around me. And so I noticed there was more sheep around. And then the two lads come every day to feed their sheep and the sheep that are here as well. And when I went for my walk, it was really funny because I realized that these sheep are not afraid of humans. Like the sheep that are normally here, as soon as I come, I'll sort of say hello and whatever, and they just run like I'm an axe murderer, and I suppose from their perspective, humans are. Anyway, won't get off on that tangent. But these new sheep, now they associate me with food. So it was really funny, because where I walk, it's kind of flat fields, and then it gets steeper and steeper and steeper. And these sheep were just following me. They just kept with me. And it was so funny. Every time I turn around, they'd stop, and it was like something you'd see in a movie where, you're going, are those trees following me? And then you turn around and all the trees have stopped moving, and you go, no, it's just my imagination. It's like that, but with sheep, very cute. Saw my first lamb. Bit early, I thought, for lambs, and he did look a bit shaky. So I hope he survives. But first lamb of the season. I'm not sure what gang of sheep he was in. I haven't seen much of the other sheep. That was the other thing I noticed as well. I think the sheep who are normally here have run for the hills. So that's it for farm news. If you want to write to me, it's john@furtheremergence.com. Love hearing from you. It can be a question or just how it's going. So I've had a letter. This person says, it seems like my relationship is in crisis, but we are both willing to work on it and take care of it. My question would be, I guess that our path in the growth of consciousness is individual. I see it like a spiral where I move inwards to my inner center self. So what is the thing with relationships and growing consciousness? If I think about a spiral metaphor, are our spirals juxtaposed and different issues appear in our relationship as I and he move forward in it? Or is it just one big spiral where we're all moving and meet at some point. Thank you for your work. You're welcome. Well, a couple of things about relationships and love. I think the main thing is there's a kind of Hollywood thing about love, a romantic love, where, your average rom-com, romantic comedy, will be, boy meets girl, boy loses girl, boy gets girl again. Or girl meets boy, girl loses boy, girl gets boy again. That's the kind of classic cliched one. But they always end with the happy ending. They get together and the credits roll and it fades out, happy ending, and they live happily ever after. That's the way all good fairy tales end. So it's understandable that you would think that if you find true love, the one, all that kind of, again, those are all just ideas. They're concepts. Because they're part of a time set, like I'm going to find the one and I'm going to spend the rest of my life with the one. So it's all future stuff, and as like the future doesn't exist. The only thing that exists is right now. So what the idea that's not really, or the idea that's missed in all the romantic comedies and the idea of romance, is that love is a little fairy cottage that you go into with your, the one, the person, and all your troubles are over. That love, is a big fluffy eiderdown you can both get in under and shield yourself from life. And in a weird way, that is actually true, but not in the way that it's portrayed. Because what love actually does, in my experience of myself and in other people, is love creates this field around you, which you go into. If you go into it consciously, that's great. But even if you don't, it still happens anyway. And love is a profoundly healing energy. Again, doesn't that sound nice? Like, ooh, healing energy. That sounds great, John. Yeah, well, it is, but healing can be a messy business sometimes. Because often for things to heal, they have to come up and out first. So, in my experience, the happy ending, the happily ever after ending, is, the door closes and that's great, and they go in and they start having tea and whatever. And then within a couple of months, one of them is behaving really badly. And the other one is going, I made a terrible mistake. This is the wrong person. I shouldn't be with this person. They weren't like that when we got married, or they weren't like that when we got together. They weren't like that in the beginning. Now they're just all this, all this stuff is coming out of them. Okay. That will be because of the power of love. That will be because love has created this, field around the two of them, and it's almost like the unconsciousness just rises up in both to be healed. Another way of thinking about it is the person feels safe enough to finally begin to ventilate and to allow some of these very pained parts of them to come to the surface. Of course, I have to say, I'm not condoning abuse in any way, and I'm not saying, you just put up with bad behavior. No, I'm not saying that at all. But if you understand what's happening, it is very helpful, because then you can navigate it in love. Because that's the thing, is if you stay true to love, you can get through anything together, even if that means you are no longer together. I know that sounds like a contradiction, but you'll notice that a lot of the pains that come from relationships are to do with ideas about what a relationship should be. So the idea of staying together forever, that's going to cause you a lot of pain if it's not what's happening, or if one of you wants to leave, or if you want to leave. Because really, like in truth, again, the idea of relationship, that's an idea as well. We have a relationship, we're in a relationship. That's not a real thing, that's a concept. Love is a real thing, but love is a moment-to-moment thing. Love is something that's alive every moment that you're together. And you can be true to love, but it's very hard to be true to a relationship because it's not a real thing. It's just an idea. It's a thought. It's a concept. But love is real. And how you can be true to love is you can just keep checking in with yourself, checking in on the inside. Particularly, in the middle of an argument. That's a great time to check in with yourself, to check in with love. Am I being true to love? Not some external idea of love, but in my heart, inside me, I know what is true to me. I know what my nature is. Am I being true to that? Or am I trying to score points? Or am I defensive? Am I covered with anger? Am I resentful? Am I trying to score points? What's moving me? What am I being true to here? These are all great questions to ask, particularly in the middle of a fight. Because then meditation really is helpful. Because one of the things that happens with meditation is your speed of consciousness increases. And it's very handy when you're in a fight with somebody that you love. Because then you can hear yourself your mind formulating the perfect argument that is going to destroy the other person's argument, and you're going to win the argument, but you realize that it's not loving, that you're not, being true to yourself on the inside. So you're able to get ahead of yourself fast enough and not say it. That's where the speed of consciousness is really helpful. Because we've all been in arguments where you say something, you win the argument, and you feel terrible afterwards. And that'll be because you weren't being true to yourself. You weren't being true to love. So, if you are consciously going into love together, because in my understanding of it, love and consciousness are the same thing. But the two words are contextual, meaning it's better to use one in certain circumstances and another in other circumstances. Meaning, when I'm talking about love, it's easy to get what I'm talking about. And then other times when I'm talking about consciousness, it's more understandable, it's more appropriate. But they're both the same thing. So you're going into love together, you're going into consciousness together, or going into the mystery together. You could say the mystery as well. That's another one that you could lump in as the same, but it means the same thing. Now, if you're consciously aware that you're doing that, that's all you need, really. Your partner doesn't need to know that. You don't need to get on the same page. You don't need to, for them to know about consciousness and the mystery, and, you don't have to do any of that stuff. Like, if you're just true to love, it will take care of everything. But that may mean that you are not with that person, or it might mean that you are with that person. When you're being true to it, then you're not attached to an outcome. All your focus is on being true to love. And when you let go of a lot of the ideas of relationship, marriage, forever, commitment, they're all ideas. Some of them have got great merit as ideas, but they get in the way they can bog you down and drag you down when it comes to being able to check in with yourself. Am I being true to love? Moment to moment. If you keep coming back to, am I being true to love? You can't go wrong. It's a bit like what Rumi was saying. It won't lead you astray. But beyond no illusion, being true to love is one of the very hardest things you can do in the spiritual life, because you've got to let go of so much. Like, to truly be true to love, you have to give up everything. You have to be willing to give up everything for no reason. There's nothing in it for you, ostensibly. except being true to yourself, which is the same thing as saying being true to love. But it's not easy. And the more you go into it, the more can come up, both in yourself and in the other person. But it's a funny kind of thing, but as you give over to it more and more, and you give over to the love more and more, there's a lot more love in your life, even if you're on your own, which again sounds crazy, but that's been my experience. So I have great sensitivity for your letter. I know that love and relationships and the idea of relationships can be very painful, particularly because attachment is involved as well, which I didn't talk about. Like attachment, it can be everything from, attachment issues, which is a whole psychological construct, and can be very powerful. That's why people are so crazy in relationships, because all this stuff comes up, is triggered by them. But I've found that when you're true to love, it can be very shocking to discover how little actual love is in your connections with people. If you're really honest with yourself, and how much attachment is in there, and that's a lot of where the pain comes from, is in attachments, and there's nothing wrong with them. Once you see them for what they are, if you think there's, you like have your attachments have value, then you're going to have lots of pain. How dare you sleep with that person? How dare you even look at that other person? How dare you not respect me in front of my friends, and all that kind of thing. That a lot of that stuff you will have to let go of. But equally, you may find yourself saying things like, I'm about love, and what you're doing is not loving, so I can't stay, or I can't be around that kind of behavior. And I'm not telling you what to do. I'm just telling you how it is for me. I can't be around that. I can't, if you really believe in your anger and that you want to sort of pollute the house with it, and you want to think you're very justified in it, that's fine, but I can't be here for that. I love you, but I can't be here for that. So you may find yourself saying outrageous things, or things that you think are outrageous, or that you think you would never have said. And again, if you're true to love, it will guide you through. But it's very difficult, because you're, being true to love is seeing through your own unconsciousness, which is very difficult to do. But that's one of the great gifts of love and relationships, is that it will highlight these things for you, because it's relatively easy to be calm and peaceful in a cave away from everybody. Try it, when you're in a relationship with somebody, and maybe you have small children and you're sleep deprived. Much harder then. That's all I've got for you this time. I trust you're well. I trust you're of good cheer. I'll talk to you again soon. Bye.